Yep. Okay, welcome everybody here, Monday, March 18, 2024, the Fire Exec Committee meeting. We're going to call this meeting to order. And the meeting will be streamed live and recorded for public viewing on Telm's YouTube page using the following link: www.youtube.com/@town-of-Plympton-Wyoming/streams if you choose to watch it now or at any time during the next year. Item number 2 on the agenda tonight, if anybody has a pecuniary interest, you can either declare it now or anytime throughout the meeting. Item number 3.1, the agenda. Moved by Kristen Rodriguez, seconded by Gary Atkinson, that the minutes be adopted by the Fire Exec Committee. Those confidential minutes of the closed sessions of committee remain confidential and restricted from public disclosure in accordance with the exemptions provided in the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And we have the Fire Exec Committee meeting minutes of February the 12th. Anybody have any corrections on those minutes, spelling errors, corrections, additions, deletions? Kristen, anything?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Gary, anything? Anybody else have anything on there? No? Okay, all in favor of those minutes? Thank you. Gary? Item number 4. Any business arising from those minutes? We have a couple items there. 4.1, training officers positions up.
So, if I may through the chair, we had one applicant to the training coordinator's position. It turns out that he's quite qualified. We will go through the interview process tomorrow evening to get that process done. And then from there, I'll bring Adam a report on that and make my recommendation as to whether or not to offer that person employment.
4.2, Community Emergency Grant Award.
Yep, we, through the chair, we've been successful in receiving the full amount, which is around $26,000. That will cover approximately 20 people to be trained as EFR. And we have also gotten 2 RIT packs, or Rapid Intervention Team bags, which assist with down firefighters. So those purchases are in process. It was a bit of a back and forth with the organization, but it looks like everything is good to go. Yeah, it was the full amount, absolutely. Yep. And again, we did have to do some more back and forth even after the emergency council meeting, so.
That's on the grant. Yeah, that's awesome. Good work, and thanks for going back 2 or 3 times to get things straightened out, and a lot of money, and we can certainly use it.
And I appreciate, Chair, I would appreciate all council's patience with that, on the emergency meeting and all that. That was wonderful. We do thank you very much for that.
Thank you, guys. Okay, no other questions on that. 4.3, educational information on smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors. Information have on.
The staff report on that matter.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Item 4.3, that was moved by Gary Atkinson, seconded by Kristen Rodriguez, seconded by Nicole Campbell, Executive Assistant Corporate Services, dated March 7th, 2024, regarding the request of additional information on smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors be received for information purposes. Comments on that? Kristen?
Yes, if I may, one question. So, maybe our CAO can help, answer. I know part of council's responsibility is to make sure there's, not this committee, but council as a whole, is to make sure there's educational program in place. So this just says for information purposes, and I'm not sure if it should really technically go to council to say, okay? Like, you know, just so they're all aware. Is it- Like, I don't know how that process works.
What we can do is we can provide we'll double check if there's a legal requirement to have council endorse it. If there is, it'll go under recommended reading action, or sorry, correspondence action required. We'll provide the staff report along with the documents to be endorsed. If it does not need to be legally endorsed, then we would provide the staff report along with the information in just a correspondence, so that council is directly drawn into that report instead of having to look through the minutes to see it.
Right. Aware that we do have it for legal reasons.
We will, that is on the next council agenda, one item or the other, depending on the legal requirements.
Right. Thank you. And it looks good, a lot of good information there. So I'm very happy to see the progress here. Just wasn't clear, because in a regular council meeting, I'd mentioned, like, I saw what was going on with the tax document, or tax bills. And then, but this had a lot more. This is going to go on.
Facebook, so
So this is on our website with addition to what was already on there.
Okay, perfect, that's perfect.
And if I may, through the chair, Councilor Rodriguez, you're absolutely right. It would be a good idea. Council needs to be informed as a whole. That's pretty clear. Whether or not the CAO would have to, again, that would be a process you would know, but the FPPA, they are ultimately responsible. Yeah.
And having council endorse it is
Yeah,
not
either.
a big deal. So just to check all the potential boxes, we'll just put it under correspondence action required, and it'll be the same motion, but instead of received, it'd be endorsed.
Yeah, whichever way it works, doesn't matter, as long.
The inclusion of a motion is one very short step, so better safe than sorry. We'll just include it in there under action required with an updated motion.
Any other comments on that? Motion?
Sorry. Let me ask one more. So this kind of ties into the master plan update we're gonna be talking about.
Yes, indirectly, of course it would. Education as a whole is an area that within fire prevention that we're gonna be really focusing on over the next little while. We do see that there is a bit of a gap there. We're seeing evidence of it on a lot of the calls we're going to. I'll give you a perfect example. We had a call the other day. The homeowners actually stood us down with a CO alarm activation. The homeowner went and stood us down. I went ahead and responded non-emergency. When I got there, the alarm was still going off. I actually then paged out the station again, and when we got to the door with the detector, we were at 40 parts per million. And we'd already started venting at that point, so we were quite confident that it was probably a great deal higher. Following up with one of our officers did follow up with the homeowner, and in fact, they required their furnace to be replaced. So there is a gap there with understanding what that means when it goes off and how to respond to that. That's a big part of what we have to focus on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So all in favor of that report? Thank you. Five accounts, 5.1 there, moved by Kristen Rodriguez, second by Gary Atkinson, that the fire jet committee receives, approves the payables for February 2024. Gary. Question?
Just trying to locate that, Mr. Chair. I just see that all we update our boating inventory, because I see that we've spent $2,000 chief on boots. Also, is them on a regular basis?
Absolutely. So they're subject just to a 10-year lifespan. Irregardless, even if they get put on once they're put on once, they go into a 10-year cycle.
Mhm.
And we discovered late last year that we had a high percentage of folks that had expired boots. We had to get them into boots as quickly as possible.
What do we do with the old ones? Is there a home for them, chief?
We are in the process right now, working with Firefighters Without Borders to donate a lot of our expired equipment and equipment that we deem surplus. Firefighters Without Borders is an organization out there that typically deals with countries that can't afford organized fire services.
Okay.
And they go down and they actually participate in, like, firefighters will take 6 months off their work and they'll go down and actually train them how to do it, and then the equipment is provided as well. So we just happen to have a particularly fortunate event where one of the Firefighters Without Borders personnel sits on the board of directors, is very much a friend of the department, and we're gonna take full advantage of that. So at some point in time, when we do get that on the go, I think it would be a good opportunity for the fire board to sit down and come with us, and that we could document that with a photo or something like that, that we've committed to that donation.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner?
That was your only question?
That is correct.
Um. you forgot my question.
Chris's question.
If I remember, I'll come back to.
No, okay. Just to follow up on
Oh.
Gary,
Sorry, remember. Sorry. Was that accounted for in our budget? The replacement of the boots?
Well, we originally had money set aside for PPE for bunker gear, but we're not gonna require as much bunker gear this year. So we should be good that way. We've got some flexibility there, some room, so we're in good shape that way. Long-term plan is, as we've stated before, through the chair, if I may, is to set us up on a life cycle management plan where we're replacing X amount of gear every year, instead of having these bulk turnovers, right? That's not ideal for us. We would rather have, for example, we're gonna replace 10 sets of gear, we from head to toe, and continuing to do that every year, so that our budget stays somewhat static, and we have a constant influx of new gear as it expires, so that we have a much better way of life cycle managing that. Last year, when we were writing the budget, I didn't have that data in front of me. We're now starting to generate that data. 24 is a lot about generating data so that we can start putting those plans in place, so that we can get a more stable budget.
So this purchase here around 18,000 was for 20,
Almost 30 cents,
30 sets,
29 cents.
39 sets. So there technically would still be 31 sets left to
Give or
replace.
take, yeah.
And we'll find out this year sometime when those come due so that we can budget accordingly.
Yeah, so we may have to, in the interim, replace some boots early to get them on that skip cycle, but that'll be something going on. DC Freer, it looks after PPE. DC Freer has got a really good database he's put together, and he's generated all that information, and he might be better off to be able to tell you more about what we would require this year than I would be able to.
So is there anything else we expect to see?
Correct. This year there'll be some helmets to be replaced. But yeah, currently there's no expired PPE that's in service, helmets, bunker gear, boots, gloves, balaclavas, everything's all current. And we've got a way to track that now. It's all on a spreadsheet that does some automatic highlighting with dates and stuff to flag when it's coming due within 6 months or 1 year to be able to prepare for that and then budget for it for the following year.
So no more like surprises for this. Okay, thank you.
Gary?
Yeah, if I can go back, Mr. Chair, to just a question. It looks like, Chief, you spent a bit of money doing home repairs, but I'm presuming that's all for the Kanlaki station.
If I may, through the chair, I rent my home, so I would normally give that to my landlord. So no, that was all repairs to the Kanlaki station. And my hat is off to the staff at Kamalaki and Scott and Jordan's team. They have done an outstanding job. That training room looks like it should belong in a brand new building. They have done a fabulous job. When you walk in there, it's bright, it's fresh. It just evokes pride, and it's just very wonderful to see.
So we pretty well done there now.
We are pretty much done for the year. We're at where we should be, the budget wise, so we're done as far as that goes. Any other further repairs will have to be budgeted next year. But for the most part, we're probably looking at minor things. At some point, we're gonna probably have to buy new chairs for out there. The chairs that they sit on during training are quite rigid for long periods of time, so they will have to be replaced at some point. So that'll be budgeted in 2025.
We have some with tennis balls on the feet.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Anybody else got any questions? Chief, one of our fellow committee members here was mentioning to me about some problems with bunker coats throughout the North America. Something to do with the linings. I don't know all the details. But also a retired firefighter sent me something on it also about these coats having some layer in them that's not supposedly be the healthiest. I don't know any details, but so I guess what I was going to say was maybe are you going to be are there different bunker coats out there that don't have this problem?
If I may, Mr. Chair, you're talking about PFAS, Forever Chemicals. I sit on the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs Cancer Awareness Committee. This is, and actually the county is actually forming its own committee as well amongst the chiefs, so we're getting on top of it. Yeah, absolutely. So the vapor barrier in your bunker gear uses PFAS. And PFAS over time has been known to lead to cancer. And there's a lot of science behind that. So right now they're in the process, they're in the very final stages of testing gear that is supposedly PFAS free. Again, we're watching this very closely to see what that means. We have cities like Vancouver, Karen Fry, very lovely person, great fire chief. She's on the same committee as me, and they've already pre-ordered gear. So, we do know we're heading in that direction. Again, there's a lot in the air, and as that happens, we'll have to make a decision as to whether we're going to do a bulk purchase of gear to replace it, or if we're going to life cycle it out and replace it. It's one of those things, it's like anything else. What affects you might affect me totally different. So we're going to really have to watch that. That's just part of the whole carcinogen prevention program, which again, we're heading down that road, but we really are still in the final development stages and final approval stages of bringing that gear into service. So I'm kind of watching and shooting on this one. That's an old infantry saying for when you're sitting on the watch. And so we're watching and shooting and see what happens with that. From there, we should be able to make a good plan as to how we're going to replace it. It will have to be done, but we'll have to do it at a rate that, number one, doesn't present a safety risk to our firefighters, and number two, that it'll be done with respect to the taxpayer.
So that's kind of why I brought it up. It would make sense that till we kind of get this thing resolved, that we don't go out and buy a bunch of bunker gear that going to meet this new standard, right? I don't know how much of that gear you have over there that's going to expire, but certainly something to look at.
I think we're sitting pretty good right now, and I think we should have a much better idea of what's going to happen by the fall. And that's when we'll be looking at replacing bunker gear anyways. So I think we'll have some good answers by that point. But what are we sitting at? We have not that many sets that are due to expire next year, are they? I think it's we're in pretty good shape that way.
We have spent a fair buck on bunker gear.
So we have no sets for 2024 that'll be expiring. There's 2 pairs in 2015. Or sorry, 2025 from 2015 gear. Thank you. And yeah, from that point, so out of we have anywhere from 95 to 100 sets of bunker gear, so that's kind of from about 5 years ago, we were aiming at 1.5 pairs per firefighter, we're at that point. Now we're in a spot to start cycling it through and. Yeah, wait and see what the PFAS changes that are coming to
What are one of these bunker gear coats worth? Just roughly, we need 100 sets.
Coat pants,
just under $4,000. Around there.
$3,800, I think, is what we pay for a set of coat pants.
Times 100, so
Yeah, it is quite an undertaking. And that's why we're trying to do the life cycle management much more strategically. So that, again, we don't put a large burden on the taxpayer all at one time.
I just thought that Kristen had mentioned that to me a couple of weeks ago now.
Yes, it was, the chief in the, tour that I did, he actually showed me the different layers. So my question was gonna be, these bunker gear normally do have an expiry date then, 10 years, the same as the boots. So we've done this, it's probably replaced them anyway, it's expenses, but we've got them.
We were buying bunker gear for 20 years, buying so many sets every year.
Okay. All right, so it'll just be normal, you're just hopefully gonna have something better.
Right now, I think all our firefighters that those gear a firefighter, they have it in their service, not in their spares, 5 years old.
Yeah, just kind of.
We've got, what happened was especially with the boots was, it just, for some reason that got, we always think about bunker gear, but we never think about the incinerator PPE, like your boots, your gloves, those things, and they have a lifespan as well. So now we have to incorporate it and look at it instead of just looking at focusing on a set of coat and pants. A complete ensemble of gear has to be then focused in, and then we look at replacing a complete ensemble every year. Now, that might mean firefighter A gets a helmet, but firefighter B gets a set of bunker gear, but it's still the cost of a complete ensemble.
Thank you.
Okay, just back to them boots for a minute, because I did get an email on, on this particular topic on boots. You said you got 29 new sets of boots?
That's about right, yeah.
So when we look at this $15,000, I think that's where, when you look at this, you look at one line, there's size 12, $493. That was probably more than one.
Would have been about 6 or 8 pairs of size 12.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to clarify that, so yeah.
The invoice would have probably said how many pairs, but yeah.
Anybody else have any other questions on the expense sheet? Okay. All in favor? Thank you. Point one. Moved by Gary, second by Kristen, that the report by Eric Campbell, Fire Chief and Director of Emergency Services dated March the 5th, 2024, regarding the Plympton-Wyoming Fire Master Plan dated September the 30th, 2022, be received as information and forwarded to council for their update and information. Okay, who wants to comment? You wanna? give us a brief-
Is there any specific questions, or would you rather you just start from the beginning and go through the 46? recommendations?
Well,
It's up to you, Chair. I do have some questions. It would be nice kind of just to look through them. I don't know if it shouldn't take long. We've only been through this 500 times.
Yeah.
I think you know it.
okay, well, I'll just make an opening remark that this report, I like it. I like the way it's spelled out each item, timeframes, the coloring on there that gives you an idea what's in, what's out, what's pending, what's. Like it's easy, it's an easy to read, and when it gets to council, it'll be an easy to read then for them. And I think it's great job. So,
A little concerned though, mine's only in black and white.
oh, here's a black and white.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh, that's funny.
All right,
I'll wing it, I'll wing it.
you want to go first, Gary? Any questions?
No, I can only echo your comments. The way it's set out, I think is, the way we see it, very similar to what we did with the other issues that we dealt with. I think it should be easy for everybody, all of council and everybody to see what we're progressing and at what pace. So, I did look at it and I nothing. Let me right off. I will defer my quality time to my counterpart as a list.
Yeah, well, just before it gets to Christian, like this is exactly what it says here is that information is gonna go to council for their update information, because this was a master plan for the council, for guidance for the next how many years. So they will be able to go over it and list whatever they want in or out, or questions about what we're doing and what we're not. Some of it is already complete, as stated, so.
Yes.
Anyways, saying that, Kristen, go ahead with your question.
Well, I did find a couple that or one in particular that should have been green, but was still yellow.
Yes, near the end, I think. I realized that today. I'm like, oh, that says completed and it should have been. Well, because initially when I did the document, I had just left it in black and white and put everything that was completed in yellow and pass that up to the CAO. And I thought, oh no, I'll color coordinate it so it's a little easier to read. And then I realized, oh, I must have missed that one and turned it green. So I apologize for that.
Yeah, so that's kind of why I just wanted to make sure our colors were correct. Like, to me, I was confused on some of the yellows.
Well, maybe it would be better if I just quickly highlighted every point. It'll only take us a few.
It will, yeah, I agree.
Well,
And then there were just a few statements, I apologize. And then there were just a few statements you made in some of the ones that you weren't addressing or seemed completed, but then you had a comment you put in about something's failing or something needs to be changed or changes are coming, like, for example, to the DC's role. So those were kind of confusing and
I think,
with respect to what we were trying to accomplish here.
I think if I go through that and explain it, it makes sense. All right, so if we look at the recommendations, number one, obviously the municipal essentials course. That's in a further staff report tonight, so that'll make complete sense. We're obviously in progress for that, so it's obviously yellow. The ENR bylaw, we do know that there's some areas in the ENR bylaw that have to be updated. Again, that's in progress. And that'll probably be, we're looking at bringing that back to council in June for review. Then we get down, we go look at job descriptions for the fire chief, administrative assistant, and district chiefs. They're done, they're completed, we have those. And obviously, as
So just on that point, sorry, on the job descriptions, it says it should be reviewed annually or as positions become vacated. So is that on like a yearly list or something?
well, standard HR practices that you usually go through a job description every year, just to make sure it's updated. And then when a position becomes vacant, the employer may want to change that job description, because at that point in time, you're bringing in a new person. So that's just normal practice for the most part. So we get to 4. We're in progress. We're trying to get the SOGs all done. So what we've done with that is the officers have made the decision that we want to form a separate committee for standard operating guidelines. So we're in the process of getting that committee in place, hopefully by mid-April, and they're gonna start going through the SOGs one by one. There'll be a representative of every level, as well as the health and safety committees and the training folks as well will be involved in that. And then it'll be a process. So as an SOG is updated, it'll then be sent out for review. And then if any training has to be updated because of that, the training department would then have to alter any type, or the training folks would then have to alter their lesson plans to reflect that.
Yes, and if I remember, if I may, through the chair, if I remember in the fire master plan, there was some about changing standard operating guidelines to standard operating procedures. But that wasn't really realistic, I believe, from previous conversations we had. So you kind of need a little bit of both.
We do. It's a combination, if I may, through the chair. We do need a combination of, so we want, there's certain things that we want our officers and our folks making decisions to have some flexibility on, because not every situation is the same. Some things we can't be flexible on, right? If you need to be fit tested for your mask, you be fit tested every year. That's not an option. It has to happen. Whereas air quality is good. The incident commander might be that you don't require your mask on that incident. We have a guideline for that they would then follow, or if they have to deviate from that, that allows them that flexibility. All right, number 5, we've already started the budget now falls under the fire department and you folks for review. The document is, though, as part of this year, we're myself and the CAO will be sitting down and just streamlining the document a little bit. There's a lot of repetitiveness in there because when they brought the 2 halls together, the departments together, they created one document, but left basically both things in there. So we're just going to streamline that a bit, ease it up a bit. And the CAO has already done it with his previous department and it was quite successful. So I know that's one of the areas that we had talked about focusing on. 6, we talked about 2 deputy chief positions. At this point in time, that's not on the table. We have 2 district chiefs. We're slightly changing their roles a bit to employ them better, adding and taking away less administrative side. We're utilizing Nicole for the administrative side. And for that particular recommendation is on. 7, obviously, Nicole is here and doing a great job for us. She's now worked with Scott, who's handed off, for the most part, the administrative side to Nicole to do things like hours, reports, stuff like that. As you saw, we have revenue starting to come in, so she's going through and doing the appropriate billing and so forth like that. So really going in a good way.
And just a question on that. It's just a third that she's dedicated.
Give or take.
Yeah, give or take. 50%.
Depends on the week. We did some internal adjustments when we had the staff changeover. As for instance, Ella Flynn, our deputy clerk, kept cemeteries. And switched with Nicole for special events. That gives Nicole a bit more time to work on fire and HR administration. So there has been some adjustments to allow more time. Cemetery can take up a fair bit of time at times, so we've been looking for efficiencies to make sure that Nicole has the time to support the fire department with administrative tasks, and so far it's been going well.
So what are we going to charge the fire department budget wise?
I'd have to look into what was the allocation that Norma put into the 2024 budget.
Thought it was 50, but I couldn't.
No,
No, it was one.
How much?
it's 1/3.
40%. Not a third, 40%, right?
I think it was 1/3.
Pardon?
A third, I thought it was 40%.
It's yeah.
Between 30 and 40%.
Yeah.
It's basically 2 out of 5 days a week. So.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Is it?
On that,
Thank you, Scott.
on the bottom of it, you put the role is currently being trained to maximize Fire Pro software.
Yeah.
So Nicole is learning.
Nicole is in Fire Pro more than any of us probably. And she's probably becoming the resident expert on Fire Pro. We did sit down and Scott and myself and Nicole were lucky enough to get some training from Fire Pro. Since we're paying for it, we're going to use it. And there are some other features of Fire Pro that we're going to explore. For example, Sarnia, being our dispatcher, can actually start populating those reports instead of everything being left to Nicole. So there's a bit of a cost to that, so we're going to explore that. Look at it for next year if it's realistic in the budget. There is also the issue of Fire Pro being, a program where it's it is, like nineties. If you look at it, you're gonna say this is the 1990s coming back to haunt us. But it's easy, it's straightforward, and it works. But there, at some point in time, we will have to explore updating that software.
I do know it's another line item, but, every time I ask about Fire Pro, it seems to be a different answer. Fire Pro. I actually went and looked it up myself. Trying to get a better understanding because it was so confusing. And I think you noted here that it does have the capability of going online.
Certain, if I may, certain portions of it absolutely does, and we're going to utilize some of those portions too. I think the ultimate goal is to eventually run paperless for the department. We do have already in place, the iPads in a lot of our vehicles. There is a, report generator document that we can actually use and input it into, which is the cloud side of the cloud-based version of what you've seen. The main artery, the guts of the program is still not a cloud-based program. There's certain parts of it that can work to our advantage. Right now, we're generating a lot of paper. It would be a lot better if we could get a lot of that information in and get it started at real time. And Fire Pro does have that ability with those cloud-based features. So that's definitely something we've already had that conversation. We're definitely looking at right now. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And then the costs, obviously, I didn't realize there was additional costs to get
So-
reports from the dispatch.
It's relatively, it's not that much money if you consider the ground fee. I think it's around $1,200.
A year.
And yeah, and then I think it's around $750 to buy the option for the software. Again, that's something we're gonna have to look at for 2025. I think we have to be realistic too. Is the money worth, or like, are we, does that translate to increased productivity, and how much? And as if there's an offset that they're worth the $1,200.
Questions on that one, Gary? The only comment I would make on that is that, before you come along, chief, there were a lot of questions around this, Fire Pro, about getting rid of it. Lining up with the county and the fire department, so, I'd have to go back in the past minutes to look at some of those conversations, but certainly was being, said to us that this thing wasn't working for us and that they were gonna be looking at different options, so. I don't know where all that went. Go ahead, Gary.
You had a point that I recalled. I think the county had issued a comment that it wasn't cooperating with their security issue. So I don't know if we followed up with that or not to ensure that.
The county has, through the chair, if I may, the county has made a patch that works around it,
Okay.
and it's made it much more functional. They have said as the county right now is hoping to move away from having a server of their own. They're hoping to move everything to a cloud-based server. So when they fully go over to a cloud-based server, we'll either have to pay them to maintain a server on site for us, just for Fire Pro, or we'll have to find a program that can work off a cloud-based system. So I would suggest that it'd be probably appropriate for the chief and the district chiefs, as they're looking at ways to expand the use of Fire Pro, also talking to them about the availability to move it to a cloud base.
I do know Fire Pro that and the county have been in talks to each other that to solve all these issues and everything that we had trying to log on and operate it and everything else. And here, the last little while, it's been it's easy to get on and that, then before issues later, I could go issue 3 reports and it froze up. The only way to do it is to crash my computer. Start over.
Well, we did.
It's all gone, so.
If I may through the chair, we did discover that when we started going through this whole thing with Fire Pro, and having some virtual meetings with the township, with the county and with Fire Pro themselves, that for some reason the patches were never updated properly. That was a big issue. And they had never actually conducted any type of operational update to the program since 2021 was the last one that was done. And that was providing a lot of issues. We do know that at some point in time, we're gonna have to explore other options, and as I said to Councilor Rodriguez in the past, this buys us some time to do that. Right? Right now, to go to a replacement program that does all the functions, gonna be upwards of $10,000 a year. As more people come online and replace Fire Pro, as with most things, we'll probably see those costs come down. So if we can avoid getting into that for at least a year, a couple years, it's gonna significantly, I hope, significantly reduce the impact of the cost. There's other programs that we're looking at for inventory. DC Freer has brought forward a couple of one particular inventory program, PS Tracks, that will bring more back to you folks on that for tracking inventory, hours, stuff like that. Whereas then if we did have to just put Fire Pro on an individual computer to do things like filing reports such as inspection reports and stuff like that, just isolate it for that purpose, we wouldn't affect the county. Whereas then we have a live feed for all of our inventory purposes. So we're looking at a few different options, but right now we're trying to get as much out of Fire Pro as we can for as long as we can, at least to use it that way. There's a lot there. There is right now only about 3 packages in Canada, and Fire Pro is one of them, that operate for Canadian fire departments. There's lots in the States, but unfortunately, we're not on a big enough market for a lot of those programs to say, okay, we're gonna jump in to Canada, right? Whereas they might have, 1,000 fire departments in one state. We only have 437 in Ontario, and we have 40% of the population of Canada. So I can understand why companies are hesitant to spend that kind of money to do a Canadian version.
So, if I may. So Fire Pro is still very relevant in the software, and it's Canadian, as you stated. I believe going back to what you mentioned, there was a grant being applied for to try and purchase new software, but that grant was unsuccessful because I believe the cost of changing software was pretty significant. So I think that's something if we're looking down the road to contemplate changing, which according to this fire master plan was a very relevant software still. And underutilized for sure, so good that we're getting more use out of it. But we should probably look at those opportunities for grants due to the cost.
Those grants were through the previous municipal modernization grant. Those grants are not currently available. It was a 2 to 3 year period thereafter. The government gave us grants to do strategic plans, that they gave us funds to implement some of the projects identified in our strategic plans, but those funds are gone, unfortunately.
Okay, moving on, and just like I said, I brought that up because I know we've had lots of discussion on Fire Pro right to the point where it really wasn't even being used at one time. It was kind of sitting there dormant, and so if it's being upgraded and
So far,
you guys know better.
like if I may, Mr. Chair, so far we are having some success with it. We do know that it's just like everything else in the fire service. It seems to have a shelf life. But certainly we're looking at that. I do think that there is a place for inventory software as well. But I think that's a conversation we can bring forward a report on, and you folks can dive into that. DC Freer has done a really, really super good job on researching some programs, and my hat is off to him, and I thank him for that.
Number 8.
Yeah, so we're talking about KPIs, key performance indicators. So I've kind of set our goals this year. We've kind of set them for trying to get 4 things done this year. Obviously, the Ontario regulation takes priority, trying to get our staff trained. So we've set a goal of ensuring that we're at, a 50%, particularly with NFPA 1002, which is going to be our biggest hurdle. That's pump ops. By the end of 2025, that'll put us in good position that in the spring of 2026, we should be able to reach our goal. And So we've got a number of things going on there, but the list of KPIs, as we get the training coordinator online, we'll have a list of KPIs specifically to that requirement. As we move down, comprehensive fire prevention program as required by part 2. We're in the process right now. I'm actually in the process of generating that plan. Currently, we're just doing fire prevention as an ongoing thing. In other words, we're reacting to complaints and requests, and any calls for service we get, we treat that as a complaint, and then if we come in, unfortunately, the world is, if once we've seen it, we have to deal with it. We are then writing orders. In respect to that, we have written 9 orders, and we have now laid 10 charges under the FPPA, Provincial Offences Act, specific to documentation and a few other things. And obviously, we had a fatality just in the near the end of the year, unfortunately, and of course, some of that traces around that. We're looking at building a personnel appraisal system, so some sort of basically an HR program within the fire service where we'll work to actually having folks so that the captains learn how to give, annual reviews to their firefighters. The lieutenants learn that, and we'll have a process there. That way, when promotions come up and things like that, we have a record of performance and areas where they can improve, and just like any other personnel appraisal system. Our hope is to have that kind of weeded out and brought to you folks by the end of November, so that by January we could start training on it and get it in place. Hopefully by May-ish we'll have it in place. Health and safety program, we're currently in the process of that. Again, that's the other big focus for this year, is to try and get it done. We've met with PISA. PISA is now, unfortunately, the gentleman that I was dealing with at PISA had a family emergency, had to take a couple of weeks off. But myself and Captain Davidson are meeting with them next week, tentatively, to discuss the proposal they have for coming in and doing an audit of the health and safety program we have here at the fire service, to see if that's an option for us, or we might just choose bits and pieces of that, and then of course we'll be putting that forth for the committee and council, looking at funding for 2025. There is a bit of areas we're lacking in health and safety, but we're getting much better. Both halls have had their committee stand up, and as we've seen for the minutes, they've both met. And in fact, DC Freer just sent out the appointment requirement for their committee to get together again. So we're heading in a good direction that way. We have lines on certification. We're going to get that sorted out. The initial certification is 3 days. It's online. And then we have part 2. We're going to do fire specific. And hopefully we can get enough folks that between us and other departments will offer it here, because they're going to need it as well. All right. Recommendation number 9. Well, as we know, KPIs, again, going back to the other areas that we just discussed, but we'll just keep the staff reports coming. As this moves forward, you'll get staff reports telling you about our progress.
Thank you. So this says nil.
So I have no comments at this time for that.
Oh.
Yeah, that's just notes or comments that I'm writing in.
I thought it should be green or something. It said no.
I don't have any for that particular box, so I just. All right, and we talked about Fire Pro, so I don't want to get too much into that, but the big forecast for this year is, of course, the data. So getting the data, seeing where we can apply Fire Pro, where it's limited, and what we can do to offset that. All right, recommendation 11, obviously, we've completed our switch over with Sarnia Dispatch. We're continuing to review that. It's not perfect. No switchover ever is. But we are getting some good feedback and we do know that both sides, we have some areas to work on there. The requirement for under part 12, under NFPA 1061. We kind of fell into that accidentally as part of one of our neighboring departments' requirements under the contract with Sarnia Dispatch. Those folks have to be qualified to that standard, so therefore we are lucky enough to benefit from that without having to deal with it directly. All right. So again, this goes back, point 13, goes back to data. We want to get some more accurate times of statistical reporting to reflect the year, specific to call, answer, and dispatch times, right? So when we get the call, how long it's taking to dispatch. I will say we're seeing a difference here now with what we saw with our previous provider. Particular to medicals and MVCs, motor vehicle collisions or motor vehicle accidents. We are a bit more delayed through Sarnia. We do get the call, but that is because now instead of one dispatcher, the medical dispatcher sitting beside the fire dispatcher in Walsburg, they have to make a phone call. So it's minute, but we do see a bit of a delay there. Again, the data will be forthcoming. The idea here is that in February, we'll take the data from last year, we'll be able to generate those reports with this year that we're in right now. Again, we're doing to embark on a smoke alarm program as part of 14. Then in the fall, we'll repeat it with a CO program. We're gonna do a double whammy on this one. Right? Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Councilor.
So it says smoke alarms and CO alarms will be available at any time from at no charge to a town resident.
That's right. We do get calls, if I may through the chair, we do get calls for people they're having issues with their alarms, or we show up and there's no alarm. We do put one in place. If we have the cost, we could buy them relatively cheap. And sorry,
I just wanted to start on that statement. So we've had this discussion before where we're not in the business of, like, there's stores and places where you can get them. I understand. They're out of call, there's a smoke falsing or something. You don't want to leave that residence unprotected. I get that. And we've talked about that. But to say that they're available anytime at no charge to a town resident, I don't think is a good statement to be making. Because you won't buy them in the stores, right? You know what I'm saying?
so for clarification, I'll change that slightly. Upon response, that will be reworded. Okay.
That's all. It was just,
No, and that's fair.
I don't want people lining up at the doors tomorrow thinking they can get free smoke and be out.
Geez, I wish you hadn't said that. I would need it.
The big thing is if we show up at your house, we're not gonna leave you unprotected.
And that I completely understand.
Or upon request, something just a little different wording.
So we're looking at, we have, education, we talked about that, the 3 pillars, right? Education is one of them. The big one for us here now is getting folks, right now, we had a very successful fire prevention week last year, thanks to DC George and his team did a great job. Over 250 kids.
Around there.
But if you look at the statistics, that's less than 9% of the affected population, what we call the at-risk population, right? 22% of our at-risk population are folks that are over 65 years of age. And we're also seeing a trend with those folks are the ones that were responding to CO calls and smoke alarm calls where they're not properly educated. So we're gonna do a much better job. We're gonna really focus on education. And we're right now getting in the process of getting people qualified under the NFPA 1035 program, which is great for us because we can do it fairly cheaply through the Ontario Fire College. It's an online based program and it costs us $65. I know, very expensive. and the cost of a book, which is far cheaper than any other way of doing it. We would like to eventually look at having, fire department Facebook page, X page and Instagram account. The reason is that those particular types of social media are looked at by different age groups, and different age groups tend to, the older folks, they tend to be more aligned with Facebook. And my son, who's 19, which I've shot about. And then, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, you finished and then I'll.
Then, it varies, right? You've got, your millennials, they tend to like the X or Twitter or vice versa. I can't remember exactly, but I'm getting this advice from the person who's actually teaching my 1035 course. I'm taking the public information officer course right now, so it was very interesting to me to start to learn about this information. And I do think that we have to start looking at that. The other thing is, we're gonna be looking at every opportunity we can to interact with the public. So any type of, public events that are put on, and we're gonna be there with, we'll be there with pamphlets, information, man booths, do whatever we can to get out there in public. And I've been in discussion with the OPP, talking about maybe doing a fire, emergency responders, like a safety day. In June of this year, we're looking at possibly the Kanlaki Community Center, because again, a lot of our target folks are up there when we've got, the folks that we really want to hit hard as the population is growing. And that would involve, now that's not on here, this is something we've just started developing over the last couple of days, but I've spoken to the inspector. They did something similar last year at the end of summer. We would like to catch it at the beginning of summer and maybe do a little bit of, education around the burn bylaw and things like that as well. And
So there will be an excellent opportunity coming up. The Special Events Committee will be hosting a Community Safety Day, which I do believe you guys were made aware of.
Yep.
If not, I will make sure you get the information. That would be a great opportunity for us to push for fire safety, fire prevention, et cetera, et cetera.
so, and as I was about to say, thanks, Adam, and Adam is putting me in touch with the head of the Special Events Committee. So that we can start getting involved with them and teaming up together to start hitting this a little harder. I really think that this goal for us, when it comes to this education piece, is something we could really make an impact and bring our call volume down to a little bit more reasonable level. And of course, with that goes all the great things that happen when you do that.
Yep. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sure. So I love that. And I guess when I'm on Facebook or Instagram, if you're on Instagram, but I see more education out of the Wyoming Firefighters Association and the Kamlaki Firefighters Association page, Facebook pages. They're constantly, and I always thought, why isn't the town do that? Because that's our responsibility, really not theirs. So I'm glad to hear that maybe there is, and I don't know, I think there should be some collaboration almost maybe, because they put so much out there and they do a wonderful job with it. And the other thing is absolutely, I would be totally opposed to X. That's
Former Twitter.
X or TikTok or any of those.
So TikTok's a different thing, as I've been told, but yeah, no, it's just a suggestion right now, right? Like, it's one of the things that we have to look at. I think right
Yes.
now it's kind of looking at and exploring that. Again, that will come back to you folks for approval.
Although I do think the police use it as well for information purposes.
So, and this is where the bit of irony comes in, if I may. When we had a fatality after Christmas, unfortunately, it was a terrible thing. I had reporters calling me. We had not released any type of statement, but the OPP had updated their Twitter account. And that was why the reporters were calling me. Right? So, I think that there is some value there. I think we really have to explore that.
The Kamlaki Fire Department, they do have a Facebook page, right?
Yeah.
I respond to it.
I guess I do. I know I've never been on Facebook in my life.
Yeah, they usually put some stuff on there.
I think both the pages are ran by the like association groups.
Yeah,
Not formally through the fire department, but yeah, there is fire prevention material shared on theirs quite frequently.
Yeah, all kinds of great information, like it's, and they talked about that carbon incident.
Yeah, and there's a great opportunity there, I think, either reel that in and work with the associations or create our own. The town has don't get me wrong, the town has a great Facebook page, but its focus is different. Right, and so it should be, right, it's more about, you know, we wanna get very specific to fire prevention and education, and when we start going down that road, we monopolize the town's Facebook page 90% of the time, and I'm not sure that's fair to the town.
You know, and I agree.
And I think the setup right now is kind of nice in the sense that you can rely on the town's Facebook page for formal communications, where the association's page, they're a third party, they're a group of firefighters in the association. They're more saying, hey, we had a smoke alarm detector, make sure you check alarms. It's more of an informal, community-based outreach, where ours will have to, by nature, has to be a little more formal by nature. So I think having all three working together is a great idea, sharing the same information, but allowing them to remain independent so that they can share information about their non-fire department related activities or fundraising activities, etc.
Yes.
And then we can always link back and forth as we deem appropriate.
Number 16.
Perfect, so, both the DCs have been asked to get some training. I know Chris has already done a lot of it. I know Scott hasn't signed up, hasn't yet given me dates. He has the intention, he just has not given me dates at this point. The request is that they're gonna do the legislation training, the 1031 inspector level 1. Fire codes parts 6 and 2, they're the most utilized in the fire code. Part 6 is your fire protection equipment, part 2 is your fire life safety. Assistant fire marshals, both of those folks have been issued assistant cards, which allows them to do those functions. And they have online training they have to complete with that. And then the NFPA 1035 public fire life safety educator. Reality is we wear great helmets, and when things go on, people run up to us for questions. They don't necessarily run up to the firefighters. They come up to the person who looks as professional and clean cut as Chris there. So that's why we want to make sure that they have that training. That's ongoing. It's gonna be a while. That's not gonna happen overnight. So. All right. So as part of 17, of course, the idea here is that we got more than just myself available to do the inspections and holding that certification. As well as we've also taken the training officers, the 2 captains, they've also been issued assistant to fire marshal cards, and they will long-term be going through this training as well. Then when we get on to 18, proactive public education inspection schedules. I'm hoping to have the plan back to you folks by the end of April. Early May at the latest, have a prevention plan put together for your perusal and review. Before we take it to council for approval. But we're looking at starting, I should say, shelling out the points on it, a general outline by the April, and then the full plan over the next 6 months. Right now, we're basically just doing inspections by request and by complaint. All right, so the district chiefs be trained to investigate an initial fire scene. This one is very important to me personally as well as a chief, because that initial investigation sets up the whole parameter of what's going to happen throughout that investigation. So having both DCs NFPA 1033 qualified makes a lot of sense. The problem is that when a 1033 course becomes available, if you're not like online watching it, it fills up within 30 seconds because everybody wants it. It's cool. It's science, right? I think it's cool anyway, but I don't get out much. So that's the fire investigation course. Go ahead, Gary.
Is that just a misprint? It says recommended the fire chief or deputy fire chief. Should that not be district fire chief?
Yes, so no, that was the actual recommendation. But we've put the deputy chief on hold, right? Like that's not done. So in this case, we're just focused on the district chiefs.
So, okay, so it should say district fire chief.
Well, yes, we could change it, but that, I just took that word for word as the recommendation under the master plan.
Yeah, so the master plan wrote it that way.
Correct, but we don't have,
Right. So he's saying that's the way it was written.
you wanna leave it the way it's written then.
We could change the wording, I see no reason why not. I just, right now, the only focus that we have is to ensure that DCs are qualified. Because we don't have deputy chiefs in there, whatever you want, your worship, we can do that, it has been adopted by council, so I would look to the CAO from some guidance as to whether or not we can change that wording specific.
When I go through a document where the recommendations were made by a third party, I typically leave those recommendations in their own words, just for tracking purposes. The compromise might be that under your notes, that such as you did with the up above, just note that in a small note that as per above, district chiefs are currently not being considered. Just that,
Deputy, yeah.
Deputy
I can
chiefs.
modify that, that's easy.
We already have district chiefs.
This is a working document.
Yeah, that's what we were changing it here for before it gets to council.
All right, so, again, recommendation we put in place to a procedure on how, I'm sorry, I'm on 20. About post-incident, post-fire incident investigations. We're still, we do have one there, but it needs work. So we're going to be in the process of changing that. That again is gonna be an SOP because every fire scene will be investigated with the same vigor. Versus an SOG. So, but we also have, there's certain criteria from the Ontario Criminal that says we must call them at certain points. So, for example, if there's an injury or fatality at the fire, the OFM is automatically called, so that procedure will only reflect what the OFM communique is.
So, just a question, why do you want so many people trained in this? Like, we don't have that many fires here that has to be a big fire investigation.
Well, again, if I may, Mr. Chair, it would only be myself and the two DCs that would be trained. And that's just so that if one of us isn't available, right, if I'm away on vacation and DC Freer gets a structure fire, DC Freer needs to know what to look for so that he can ascertain whether or not it meets the requirements of the OFM for them to be contacted, or if it becomes a criminal investigation.
So what did we do in the past for this?
What we've been doing with the last couple fires we had, I'm qualified and I just make the call.
I mean, in the past years, we never had 3 people investigate.
I can't speak to that. I can only go with what the master plan said.
Taking courses on fire cause determination and.
Oh, so you've been doing. That's fair.
So it is changing too. The way we're investigating fires is changing. Like I'm even at a point now where I probably should be looking at upgrading my skill sets.
21.
Of course, we're already seeing a lot of it. So this is due directly to, as building permits and stuff are being issued. I get them, anything that's going to the committee for adjustment. I get them, I get to look at them. I give them a quick peruse. If there's something there that affects, I add my comments. If not, the only thing that I only see one part of the AGCO applications, which we're looking into to see why that is. But right now, this is being looked after. Again, it's a time issue. Sometimes I feel bad because our planning department isn't necessarily getting the information right away. And then we're left with very little time to sometimes get out and physically look at the site, which I've done before. If there's a change there and I just can't, I look at the documents and I can't visualize this in my head. And I want to go out and physically see it. That's rare, but it would be nice to have a bit more time to do that.
What's AGO, CO, is that?
It's your application for your liquor permit.
Oh,
We're involved in that because we are the ones that ultimately have to engage with the amount of people that are allowed to occupy space. We're not necessarily establishing a fire department training department, but we have a plan that it's been shelled out. We've all seen it on the 28th staff report. Again, that is the shell of it, so it's, now we're just in the process of putting it in place. As we go through, we have taken the lead, this department started off some really good conversations of getting the RTC back in line. Now, so since then, other departments have jumped on board and we're having some really good conversations. So just to give you folks an update, there's a few of us chiefs meeting with the deputy fire marshal on the 26th, I believe. We're sitting down with them to have a conversation to say, you know what, you gave us this regulation. We need some guidance here. We need something that's gonna tell us, you know, how this is gonna unfold. And as it happens with the OFM, we get handed a lot of stuff and not necessarily the path to get there. You've got a good plan in place, but the problem, the bottleneck for us right now is getting Ontario Fire College approval. So we're fortunate enough to have a chief in our midst that has some really good contacts, if you will. And now we've gone to the head, if you will. The head of the training program is a deputy fire marshal who reports directly to the fire marshal. And he is physically coming here to sit down with us as fire chiefs so that we can get a more concrete direction and understand why this is being a bottleneck to get courses approved. And I think sitting face to face, as we well know, will have a much better effect. So when it comes to 23, again, our training plan talks about both hands-on training and lecture-based training. We're doing both. As we know, everybody learns differently. The way that myself and Councillor Rodriguez learn may be very, very different. They could be very much the same. So we have to focus our programs on a more equitable approach using both hands-on and lecture-based materials, which we are in the process of doing. And of course, the training coordinator, that will be his field of expertise. So, this 24 is another one that probably should have been green because we're closer to it. But I could go either way on that one. Again, it's we're disturbing a catch-up program. So with our new training program, we're looking at an additional training night a month. And an optional Sunday once a month where shift workers have the opportunity to catch up on any training that we've done. Again, it's a good, we've gone over this before. I don't want to beat a dead horse to death, but certainly looking at the 3 2-hour training sessions with a half an hour of truck checks before is multiple benefits. Number one, it gives good opportunity for folks to make up the training, and it's reasonable. When we actually have a makeup day, it's doable. And the other part of that is it gets folks familiar with the trucks because they're on them every week instead of every once a month if their platoon happens to be that platoon.
Yes, I'm sorry, I would agree. We need to change that to green. So, and then left the green. Because we did go through that with the training position.
$46.
46, yeah.
Any quicker. We just talked about 25. We're just waiting on OFM approval, so there's no need to repeat that one. 26, as part of the regular schedule, we are incorporating 3 live fire events, which will include 2 incident command training and 1 for general fire ground operations. The reality is all 3 of them will incorporate both, but just to what level? We really want to get a focus on our officers getting out there and getting used to being on that radio, getting more comfortable with it, getting more comfortable with multiple things going on at one time. As we know, fire scene is a very fluid environment, whether it be a vehicle accident, even medical. It's just understanding that incident command approach and getting everybody online.
You know what date you're gonna do that, Bern?
We don't know yet because we have to get council approval.
Okay.
But yeah, we're gonna look at whatever we choose, it's gonna be highly involved. Because obviously there's only so many times we can do that, but there's so much that we have to go through before that. 27,
So, sorry.
Yeah.
Like, so to me, like, 25, 27, 28,
they're all kind of wrapped together, aren't they?
30, and, well, they were kind of dealt with, or they were already dealt with.
They were.
The training.
That's exactly it.
coordinator Position.
They're not, we haven't got to that phase of that position yet.
I understand we haven't got to that phase, but we have a plan, an
Yep.
approved plan. Somebody going to fill that position already in place. So to me, it's kind of moved on from this stage. And now it's in an implementation state.
Exactly.
So to me, I would put these to green
I can do that.
and
The only,
let them go out to pasture and rest because we're in the next phase.
if I may, the only thing is we don't necessarily have concrete dates with some of this stuff yet.
I understand you don't have concrete dates, but it's all approved. It's all going to happen. It's already been, you know, it's past the start line.
I would agree with you, Counselor.
I don't know, what's everybody else's?
Your document, chief.
I think we can probably change those. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, sir. We'll get a lot EV vehicles, as we know, we've got to focus on, that's changing. We have heavy rescue, obviously. We have some challenges with heavy rescue on part 28, but we're working through those. One of them right now is with tow trucks and getting the availability of a heavy record. Obviously, we've talked about 29. You know, the deputy chief role is obviously not being explored, but as we know, that DC Freer has slated himself for courses. DC Jordan will be in the near future. And I've also been taking some courses.
This is a perfect example of how you put it to green, because it's already out of the gate.
Roger, understood. All right, we talked about NFPA 720 for potential relocation of a fire hall. Basically, what this is talking about is our response times. Again, the new with the old dispatcher, we really didn't get very much information. With the new dispatch, we get a whole leaflet of information. And so this year, we should be able to start tabulating our times a little bit more effectively. I think you're gonna see that during the day, the times are gonna be longer than they are in the evenings and the weekends. That's just the availability of firefighters. And that's the way the trend's kind of looking. Wyoming's kind of an exception, because Wyoming being located where it is and a lot of shift workers on their staff, they can get to the hall very quickly. I would say the Wyoming Hall's response times are probably would rival some full-time response times. Whereas Kamlaki is not fortunate enough to have that because they are more spread out. So, but again, we'll have more concrete data come the new year. All right, so ICS, this is 31 is ICS. We're talking about mutual aid and our interaction. So the county fire chiefs were ongoing conversations about going to one ICS system and utilizing it through the county. So we all talk the same way on the radio. We all size up an incident the same way. Again, that's in progress, and that's going to be a ways off. There's a lot of cogs in that wheel. Standard operating procedures, again, for tasks that are performed on fireground, not much to say here. We do have SOGs, but they do need to be updated. Key performance benchmarks for emergency response times. Again, first of all, we need the data, and then we can look at KPIs on what we can do with it. All right, so we've already got the app in place. That's the Who's Responding app. We do know that there's issues with reception in some places. Sometimes our analog pagers or pages we wear on our belts are actually faster. As we get better reception here, particularly in Kamlaki, those those times I'm sure will shift.
Been a discussion on this before about when the alarm goes off, the firefighter having to go on the computer and respond. It takes time. I've heard through these meetings that really not practical. I don't know if that's an accurate statement, but heard those kind of comments. So, I used to try to follow who's responding. I'd be looking at the thing, we said, oh my goodness, there's nobody responding, but in actual fact, there are probably a dozen people. So
There is.
is it practical? Or is there a way through the pager system that, I don't know, you acknowledge your pager or anything that would send it right through that I'm coming? Well,
There is a couple,
one way only, eh?
yeah, there is a couple systems that we could do with the paging. That there are two-way pagers, but the cost is insane. And I don't think it's required. But you're right, if I may, Chair, Mr. Chair, we've got a system there where we do. And the firefighter's got to make the balancing act. If that comes through and before he or she leaves their home, they get the page through there and they can click over that they're responding on who's responding on. Great. We're seeing particularly again out in the north end of Kanlaki district is the pager goes off, they're in their car heading towards the hall, and then the who's responding feature comes on. Well, obviously their safety takes priority. Their attention has to be to driving. So, hopefully over time we get better coverage out there. Maybe that'll make a difference. Again, it's a great tool for me. Where I find it the most advantage is if you're not available that day. So for example, if we've got workers that work outside the municipality, but they can't leave work, they click over that they're unavailable during the day, then I can look over on the say, oh, who have I got today if we have a house fire today? Because then I'm gonna have an idea of who's not available, who's available. Is that going to reflect in whether I'm calling more resources or less resources? That's where I find that tool very handy.
So, just saying that then, so it's not a hard and fast rule that they have to click on respond, but what you're suggesting there makes a lot of sense. The guy's not available, he's on holidays, put in there on holidays. So, okay. Just that I know you're trying to tighten up, and so this is one that's gonna be flexible.
Well, the reality is that the who's responding is a nice.
Yeah.
It's not, and we have dispatch settings set up with dispatch, so they page, then at a certain point, they page the opposite station. So now the folks have been trained when they get to the hall, they get on the radio and they acknowledge that the page has gone out. Then we don't have repeated pages because we know that people are coming. That's very key out at Scott's direction because their assembly time is longer. That's the nature of that hall, and that's not going to change.
Kristen?
We're completely off topic, cats. We did approve a cell tower for the Kanlaki area. Has there been any movement on it? Do you know? Sometimes they just get them approved and then they sit there.
Two or three that have been approved in the last 5 years that have not started construction.
2 or 3 and all out in the north?
35.
So 35, as we know, it's on hold. Superior tanker shutter accreditation is quite a process and it can be very costly. So again, we're looking at doing tanker shutter training, whether or not you actually get the firefighters, underwriters accreditation. That'd be part of a separate staff report where I'd make those recommendations. A lot of the time there is a break for folks on their that don't have hydrants on their fire insurance. But I caution with that, once we go that route, we have to maintain that route. And there is cost involved. I'd rather do something where we train to that standard, and in an ideal condition, we can afford it. Oh, pager test night. So we're in more ideal condition that way. But right now, it's on hold. All right, and there are a lot of talks amongst the county chiefs about standardizing, becoming a more standardized tanker. So we are all buying a similar size tanker so that we can work together more realistically, which is becoming more commonplace in counties.
Yes, Kristen.
I understood on this particular conversation that it really wasn't necessary, and that's probably why it's in red, like it's not something. We had a lot of discussions in the past on. It didn't, the cost benefit wasn't really.
It's not there, honestly. The taxpayer might save, 50 or $100 on their fire insurance at the very most. But when you start looking at what we might have to do to the taxpayer to get to that level, I don't think the balance is there. All right, so aerial device, we do have the ability, right now, we call Petrolia. But we don't actually have a written agreement, an automatic aid agreement with Petrolia, if we need it. So automatic aid and mutual aid are two very different things. Mutual aid means that we have something, we have an aerial, they have an aerial. When they need ours, they call us. When we need theirs, it's mutually beneficial. Automatic aid is they're providing a service. We don't have an aerial. They're providing us one. That's automatic aid. So we'll have to work with Petrolia, get an automatic aid agreement at some point. Whether or not that'll be a user pay system, I have no idea. That'll depend on it. And then we're gonna have to do the same with Sarnia. Because again, in the Camlack areas, particularly in the northeast end of the municipality, they're gonna be our most logical call to get us a ladder truck the fastest. And I can guarantee you at some point, they will have a user pay system.
Thank you. I'm a little bit surprised at this. Is it just the fact that
I'm not trying to be,
I'm a bit surprised?
Yeah.
This one, the fact that we just never needed an aerial truck in history.
well, and if I may, the chair, that is a conversation we do need to have at some point. Whether or not we go automatic aid or we at some point look at purchasing an aerial truck. The reality is that the requirements for aerial trucks are changing. It used to be anything over 5 stories. Well, we're realizing with new construction, anything over 2 stories, a lot of the time we're calling an aerial anyways. Because it's the only way we're protecting exposures with lightweight construction. It's the only way we can get enough water in there. We've seen that with the fire on November 20th. Most recently, we St. Clair had a fire. The only way they got at it was with an aerial truck, and it was in a bungalow. So we have to at some point entertain those conversations, whether it be looking down that road. I think a more feasible option is entering agreements.
Well, I guess my question is have we ever had the need for an aerial truck, and how was it handled? And to me, statistics are important and yes, we may have a changing environment, but historically, have we ever used this?
Chris,
I'll let the
So
district chief.
yes, we have, the fire on Broadway we had back in November, that was,
Yeah.
I made the call for Petrolia's aerial before we even arrived on scene. Because driving past from my house, could see the state of it, and the sooner you call, the sooner it shows up. So yeah, we've used them many times.
Okay, so we've used it many times. How is it been handled without an agreement in place?
The handshake type of deal.
Generally handled through mutual aid. With Petrolia being right beside us, I would expect that they would just say, yeah, we're not going, we don't have an agreement. They've made it clear every time they've been over, don't hesitate to call us, but this would be something more formal to say, yes, there is an agreement in place, because like the chief said, if the mutual aid is more like we have a tanker, they have a tanker, we'll share if we need it, but yeah, with us not having an area, we can't reciprocate the request if it's ever.
Right, so they've never asked for any costs.
I
Cost reimbursements for. the
can't
use of
comment
this
if
area?
they've ever sent a bill for their time of coming over to our municipality.
Which is unusual.
We kind of work back and forth, but certainly if you had an agreement, there'd probably be a cost put into place. I think that's kind of the way it's worked, and it was kind of buddy system, the way it's worked in the past with all the other fire departments were working, even though we have different agreements.
I will say with the fire departments that throughout the county and everything else, knowing what all the chiefs I do, And we're all willing to work together. Unfortunately, no due respect, when you get councils involved, then all of a sudden the heads start butting. We want to help, but their councils are saying, well, we're doing that, we want to get paid.
That's what
That's where things get, we had an entire automatic aid agreement around here to do everything, but everybody said, I want this, and it fell apart.
Oh, so you just do it.
Yeah.
Without those things.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But
Sounds good to me.
If I may, through the chair, the problem is where it comes a question is of liability. Right? If there's an injury to a firefighter subject to that vehicle, if there is an incident with that vehicle, where does that liability fall? At least with a written agreement, we have some sort of way of mitigating some of that liability and risk. Without one, we're generating it. So I think we need to be very cognizant of that.
Well, I'm gonna respectfully disagree, probably a whole bunch on that. Not 100%, but some of it.
It's not a problem until it is a problem.
You're right. but-
If, let's say, if we truly, thank goodness, brought their aerial in, if that aerial was damaged and they went to claim it, they said, well, where'd the damage occur? Broadway Street, that's in Plympton-Wyoming. It's not in your policy that you source out your equipment. If you have a mutual aid agreement, well, no. Sorry, automatic aid agreement, well, no, so, it's again, if nothing happens, this way is much better, it's much easier, and it gets stuff done. It becomes a problem when it's a problem. So.
Okay,
There's arguments to be made on both ends,
No, and I totally get it, but I mean,
not to push the conversation to a different area, but. Aerial's definitely something that we should look at. I think the best way to look at it is in about. Through 3 years, we need to look at updating our development charges bylaw. That is where you start saving for an aerial. Most of your need for an aerial arises out of development. Therefore, development should all pay for that. You do that through development charges. So when we update our development charge study, we need to make sure an aerial's on there. And then between then and there, we need to spec out what the departments feel they would need, and then we can start saving internally for one, and we can start saving the development charges for one. It's not a short-term kind of purchase. It's something that'll definitely need to be planned out with the district and the chief, to make sure that we're heading down the right road, and then we'll start saving for it and planning for it.
yes, I think there's lots to consider with that, like where are you housing it?
That is a key.
Right.
that's,
Yeah, but well, let's figure out.
Oh, everything else, also
Let's sell the barn first.
associated calls that come, their costs that come along with aerials. There are trucks, yeah, they go for regular servicing and certification every year. Which costs us $1,000. Aerials will cost you $30,000 to $50,000 a year to recertify them.
Oh, Smucker.
They're very expensive.
so would you be further ahead with a,
My other response to that, respectfully, Adam, is that, I mean, in a whole different conversation, but I don't feel like we're putting enough away as it is from our development charges into the reserves to replace the existing fleets that we have down the road. So that also needs consideration when we're looking at all this stuff too.
Those numbers do need to be looked at.
Mhm.
They were provided previously. Before
Yeah,
COVID hit, prices have tripled. I don't think there's any of our development charges accounts that are taken in the proper amount after COVID. Council also sets those rates. They're given options for what to set the rates are at. And there was, your standard low, medium, high. High gets you there faster, low, it takes more time. So unfortunately, development charges are not just a staff level thing. We provide the numbers and information to the planners. Planners prepare the report based off of your growth, and then council determines on all costs and the fees. So it's a group effort that we'll all be going through in the next couple of years here.
okay, moving right along. 37.
37, so we talked about recruitment. I think it's one of the things that we have to keep in mind with recruitment is that this is gonna be an ongoing process from now until the end of time. The reality of the paid on call volunteer world is there's gonna be turnover. In our case, we're very lucky. A lot of the turnover we're getting, believe it or not, is we're losing guys to full-time departments. Which is not a bad thing. It shows you the quality of firefighter. But we are losing firefighters, so we predict them annually, once we get our numbers where they should be, because we're short right now, we haven't hired. We'll be looking at probably a turnover of, on average, about 5 people a year, which is pretty realistic. One year you might only lose 3 firefighters, the next year you might lose 8, but 5 is pretty much a mid number. So recruitment's gonna be a continually ongoing thing. With that now, there's some new standards upon recruiting, especially when we start bringing people in, NFPA 1500 comes into play. So there's certain standards that we have to do, things like getting medical, getting once a conditional offer of employment set out. We would then send them to a doctor to get screened for certain things. Basically, it's like when the old days when you used to do your physical, you had to do that PAR-Q questionnaire. Well, we would hand something similar like that to a medical doctor. They would go through just to say that person's physically fit to be a firefighter, or their limitations are, and we have to employ them to those limitations. And then some sort of physical conditioning or physical component, which we're gonna have to figure out what that is. With the newest recruiting we're gonna probably do over the next couple months to get us ready to run the course in the fall. I'm not sure we're gonna have those issues in place. But as the new year approaches, I think we should have most of that in place, so that when we do offer employment to folks next year, it will be done in such a way that all of those screening endeavors will be looked at. I just lost my place. Give me just 2 seconds. I'm sorry. A little button Nancy.
Number 44?
We're getting there.
You can jump ahead. Chris has got no problem, no questions in the middle.
No, I don't. Until
So
44.
we talked about 38 firefighters leaving. Again, we just recently had a firefighter leave us. He decided that when his captain contacted him just to see how he was doing, and he hadn't been at training for a while, and he given us some good years of service, but it wasn't in the cards for him anymore. We do have those conversations as to why a firefighter is leaving. But once we get that performance appraisal system in place as part of an HR program, we will be conducting very formal exit interviews with folks that leave us. And from that'll be able to improve our service.
When you look at what's going on in volunteer fire departments, the amount of training that's being demanded of these people. I mean, it's quite a struggle for somebody that's already, trying to raise a family, to have a job, and come out and meet all the requirements that the fire marshals are putting into place. And it's almost as many rules and regulations as it is for a full-time firefighter. Probably is.
Exact same rules.
Right?
I may.
Yeah, and
Hitting the nail right on the head.
it's gonna be a worse problem in the future. I can see it coming because, well, we're already starting to have some of it, but young people to come in and spend this kind of time as a volunteer firefighter, we're struggling, and I think most volunteer fire departments are struggling. You see postings up all over for firefighters for volunteer. Out there in Forest, there's permanent sign out front there, firefighter one, so it's
And
gonna be a problem.
Lambton Shores is in a much worse position than we
Are
are.
they? Yeah, well, they're-
And we're in, and as far as departments go in the county, we're probably in one of the better positions. We retain people a little bit better than most. And we actually get quite a few applicants. We do okay for applications. But we're gonna have to start thinking outside the box. Fire chiefs across the province are gonna have to start thinking outside the box when it comes to recruiting and retention. We have to change the way we're doing business. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? Do I agree that, the amount of training they're putting on is the same as a full-time firefighter? 100%. It exactly is the same. Right? We're demanding the same certification that a full-time firefighter gets. 100%. But there is a reason for it, right? And I think the fire marshals put it best when we were speaking with him a few weeks ago at the training day for Lambton County. Would you hire a plumber in your house that wasn't certified? Would you hire an electrician in your house that wasn't certified. And the expectation of our customers now is that the person coming to their door has those credentials. The customer doesn't see whether that's a volunteer or a career firefighter. Right? Whether we agree with it or not, that's the reality of what's happening.
Okay, carrying on.
So 39, CEMC stuff, that's both 39 and 40. They're definitely got that sorted out. The hiring of Mr. Dave Clark, doing an absolute great job. We're actually building a lot of great ideas between us and him. So really great. So as far as working from home and stuff like that, we do have a standard. The town has one. We would follow that same standard where we could, if that were to come to fruition. And the only people that would really affect would be folks like the DCs and myself. Life cycle management program. So we know this is a big one. I know, Counselor, we had this conversation on Friday quite extensively. And this is going back to what you were talking about. This one's going to be, it's going to be a big one. I don't know how else to put it. We're going to have to make some tough decisions over the next little while. But I think it's important to realize that we have to do our job at the fire end to bring you the best options that are available to make those decisions. And that's, again, goes back to the data. We're in the process of generating that.
I think this is an issue that, that's plaguing most volunteer fire departments, trying to keep up with this. And we recently have supported another municipality in extending the timelines on a lot of the stuff that supposedly expires. You know, like when you look at, you know, some of these vehicles, like they're mint, you know, in volunteer fire departments, sometimes there's not very many miles put on them. And I've even talked to the fire marshal's office myself, because it used to be a thing that said after 18 years, you know, the thing's expired, but that's not fact. And as long as they're meeting all the standards and all the pumps are passing their tests, there's no standard that says you have to get rid of it in 18 years, according to what I was told.
So
Fire marshals.
the fire marshal's not wrong, but he's not right. It's not that, it's the fire writers under the fire writers survey that were the FUST guys, the fire underwriters survey. They're the ones that issue the rates essentially for the insurance companies. So they've placed a 20-year maximum, 15-year, they go with NFPA, 15-year frontline apparatus, 20-year for reserve apparatus, right? Or it's going to start affecting the rates of our taxpaying public, right? When it comes to their house insurance, right? So yeah, you're absolutely, the fire marshal's right. There is no mandatory requirement, but where it gets dicey is there. We're in good shape. We have really good equipment, but where the problem lies is all that equipment falls into an 11-year span, right? And we simply don't have the tax base to go out and spend what will cost us approximately $9 million to replace all equipment within that time frame. So we really need to look at all of that as a whole and say, what are we realistically putting away into reserves? Is it enough? And that's a conversation that we're going to have, I would say, the not too distant future.
And to add to that very briefly, just given some of my external knowledge into liability, the headache you get into, because it's an NFPA recommendation and it's a FUS recommendation, if there was an unfortunate incident where we had a delayed response, a lot of times the underwriter who's assigned to you, or the insurance adjuster who's assigned to your file, will ask for all your documentation. If you meet all those recommendations, they don't have a claim against you. But let's say you had one truck that was 21 years old, that truck broke down, and that's why you had a delayed response. The people representing the person suing the municipality could have a hole there to receive monies. Unfortunately, it happens a lot. So that is where unfortunate things such as Ontario provincial standards, plus recommendations, etc., which aren't technically law, become a problem. It's because if something bad happens, they get drawn into that area.
Kristen?
Thank you. Well, I understand what you're both saying. I mean, you could have 4-year-old trucks break down, and we've seen some pretty high expenses on some of these newer vehicles having problems. To me, it's more, I think the due diligence is more in maintenance and upkeep. I mean, one of the first questions any insurance will ask you is provide your maintenance records. And show you're doing your due diligence to maintain the vehicle. And I'd like to see in that, whatever you bring back. Is how does it affect the insurance rates? So if you keep the truck an extra 5 years, did it really make any difference? Like, I'd like to see that. How much impact really does it have on our tax base? Especially if you've got a vehicle that might be 21 years old, but like Sarah Wobbett saying, you know, you haven't even worn the tires out on the thing, or do you know what I mean? Like I think there's a lot more to this. Than just taking it at face value like that, just because they made those recommendations. You know, what's the other side of that?
I agree. We're getting into the realm of closed session stuff because we're entering into the realm of risk management, mitigating risk and things that can result in claims. I would suggest if we wanted to look at the consequences of not providing hydrant flow data to FUS, not getting the shuttling certifications to FUS, keeping your trucks longer even though you maintain them, because that's a risk management thing that results in potential claims if we don't meet those industry accepted guidelines. I think that's a conversation that we probably want to have in a closed session, not necessarily in an open session that's being recorded currently on YouTube.
Okay, moving on, number.
Thank you.
we're-
So 43. 43. So this is an easy one, quick. We're with the Royal Lee doing a lot of great stuff with them. Fire protection, fire safety planning, all that stuff. And they've agreed to us with this in the fall timeline that we can go out and use their facility to play a little bit in. And we're gonna set up an exercise. It's in progress. We're trying to figure it out. 44, as you can tell, was one of the ones that should have been green. So obviously we have internet, everything's good, even out Kamlaki, it's pretty reliable. And we can watch videos like when we're using it for YouTube training videos and stuff like that, it's working good. Which is excellent. So we looked at the Kamlaki station, certainly we know that there's some issues with the washrooms out there. Great news is there was a grant that was applied for last year, and we just found out recently that we were accepted into it for about $70,000. So we've gone ahead and started the process of getting those renovations done. It is for both the washrooms at Kamlaki and both the doors at Wyoming. So we're in the process right now of getting some quotes done and getting those washrooms brought to where they need to be.
What grant was that?
Yeah, what are we
The
doing?
AOAD,
An AODA grant that we applied for. in
the alphabet grant.
Early 2023.
Oh, that was part of their budget and that, okay, so you're using some of those funds for the washrooms.
No, this is a grant that wasn't included in the budget because at the time we prepared the budget, we didn't know if we're getting the grant or not.
Sorry.
So just for fire?
The grant was specifically applied for both stations.
Okay, so that's new information. 'Cause it-
We literally, if I may, Counselor, we just found out about that a couple weeks ago. We literally just found
So,
it.
Adam, if I make sure. At budget time, we had this, whole accessibility thing. And in there were identified things, and obviously there was reserves being set aside to try and accomplish some of them. But because you got this grant that you just found out about, you're picking things from that list in that.
No, because the grant was specific to the both stations.
Because those stations are also identified in that, so then they can come out of that, or?
No, the stations are not in our DODA plan. The identifying them of being deficient was because of the fire master plan, which then resulted in us applying for an AOD grant to fund those improvements. So the stations are not currently part of that plan. They will be moving forward though. Actually, no, they are in the old plan.
I think they're in the old plan, but from my understanding, from what the treasurer has told
Too
me,
much information.
this was a specific grant, as Adam said, this was specific.
No, I understand. I just know that they were included in that. Okay.
Yes, they are included in the old plan. I got myself running in a circle here, sorry. The grant was specific for those two projects identified at each one.
So we had already budgeted money for those washrooms.
No, we had budgeted money for showers. And the showers, because of the repairs we had to do to the structure of the building, that will have to be pushed ahead to a future budget because we had to take that money and put it in for the structure of the building. So when we started doing the mold remediation, the structural members of the wall in the office out in Kamlaki were rotted right out. You know, we have pictures, it was quite bad. So they had to rebuild the whole structure. And that, by the time it was all said and done, it was just under $10,000 to get that rebuilt. The window was $2,300 by itself. So, it's done, so that money had to be reallocated to that. We'll have to look at showers at another date. But we may have come up with a good interim solution for decontamination in the meantime. More to follow on that.
All right, so we should have a fair, we budgeted for the washroom, we budgeted, got $70,000 extra. So we shouldn't be too bad a shape.
We shouldn't be,
Considering the repairs to those walls probably should have been maintenance money anyways, not. Because the shower's not, we've been talking about that for ages.
well, and so. The money that was originally around that $42,000 was also for buying the washing machines, the washer extractors, which we purchased, and they're both sitting in the halls just waiting to be hooked up. So they'll be hooked up in Wyoming fairly quickly. Once we get the plumber in to run the piping, they'll be hooked up in Kamlaki, so. That was a large part of that chunk too. Showers out at Kamlaki are gonna be more extensive than when we initially thought. When we did the budget, it's gonna be quite a bit more involved. And that building, those are conversations again, we'll have to have at some point, but that building, we're outgrowing it much faster than we thought we would.
So just to follow up, the washrooms are complete in Wyoming Station, right? Okay,
So on basically the only area that we really are concerned about diesel exhaust, and we've had air quality tests done out there. Was out at Kamlaki. They do have diesel scrubbers on some of their apparatus. For the most part, we're not seeing numbers that are concerning. They do tend to back the trucks in and leave the doors open for a few minutes. And that helps a lot. Our guys are not being exposed to a level that is concerning at this point. Although in the 2024 budget, we will have to look at, 2025 budget, we'll probably have to look at a CO system out there when it comes to detection. To make sure that it's not getting at levels where it could be dangerous.
can you just clarify, what's the difference between Wyoming and Kamlaki on exhausted?
Absolutely. So Wyoming actually has a physical exhaust system. They're hoses that are magnetically connected to the vehicle. And as they leave the station, the vehicles pull away from the hoses and they're on a slider, right? And that system is completely separately vented. So as soon as the vehicle ignition starts up, the fan starts going and it's removing the exhaust, right? And it stays, and then as we back the vehicle in, as it comes through the door, it's magnetically connected again, and then it's backed in and slides along the track with it. That's a very beautiful system. It's a very expensive system. And honestly, with Kamlaki, they don't have the physical space to put a system like that in. It's just not an option. The ceilings are too low. in two out of the 4 bays.
Who paid for the system in,
I think it was put in when they did the original construction, wasn't it?
That was installed in 2013, 2014-ish.
through our budget?
Yeah, it was a capital project, right?
Moving on.
That's it for that particular staff report. The other two are a lot quicker.
Don't let our chief talk.
Okay, that was moved by Gary and second by Christian Rodriguez. Fire master plan report, all in favor? Gary, thank you. Excellent report. Really, really good. This will move to council now. Take it from there.
He's already been formulating all his questions at the council level.
Okay, where are we at here? 6.2, essentials of municipal fire protection. Training dates. Eventually, in April, you had some dates in April, right?
So we have 3 dates available. The 11th, the 18th of April, and the 16th immediately after the Parks and Rec Committee meeting. We would, with the 16th, we'd probably do it here. The 11th or the 18th, we would likely do it out at the station. Does everybody understand what the essentials is? It's written right there. I don't want to get too much into it.
Go ahead, Kristen.
So I just had a question about how long is the training for? Like 4 hours, 2 hours, 1 hour?
Yeah, no, and that's a very good question. Generally speaking, it's about 3. But it'll all depend on how many what kind of questions you got for the presenter. And we're trying right now to find out, it's looking for the assistant, or sorry, that one of the deputy fire marshals herself that runs the program actually wants to come down and visit us. So we're gonna get it right from the horse's mouth. That's what it's looking like. Which will be great. Yeah, it generally runs about 3 hours. Now, I've seen it run longer. It really comes down to how quick and how many questions you have. And the FPPA it's a very interesting document. You could have a lot of questions.
No, and it's just important so that when we're building it, we will understand what kind of time we're to be on that date, right? So holding it after a Parks and Rec meeting wouldn't be, yeah, that wouldn't work because, you know, those meetings could run 2 hours themselves and then another 3 hours in a training session. I don't think, you know, that's why I was asking. It's important to have context when.
So, being so council's gonna have to make this decision anyways.
Yeah.
I agree, you might as well move that 16th of May after the Parks and Rec and either go with the 2 that you got up above. Gary?
Just as an FYI, because this is obviously for council. Input and their participation. The 18th, there's several events on that night. I know the Birds and Bees event as well, so.
I think we just got that notice right around the same time this report was approved, so that was missed.
Well, this is a date, I believe, Chief, that you said the instructor is available.
So these are the dates the instructor's available, yes. What they've done is they've tentatively put every one of those in the calendar to lock them in until we choose. So even if we have to choose, 5 days before, that date is ours. So in this case, it won't get to council till the 27th, right? So I made them aware of the process and this is the best they could do. When we start getting into May, June timeframe, we're probably looking at putting it off significantly longer. And I don't think that that's a good idea. I think we need to get this out of the way as quickly as we can. It's a really good opportunity for everyone to have a chance to ask lots of questions. And these are the folks that are our regulatory bodies, so they're the ones to ask it to.
What's going on April the 11th, Gary? Any big items?
Well, no, not. I don't see anything that on this calendar. I know I personally have something at night, but that's okay. The 16th, obviously, we're gonna take that off because I'm glad we have our deputy mayors away during that time period. And as I said, the 18th, 2 or 3 events cooking that night that the council is gonna be involved with, so. It kind of leans for us to the 16th.
60.
Sorry, the eleventh, sorry.
So let's leave the eleventh on there, and if you guys get a couple other dates to present to council.
Yeah. Is it
I
possible?
don't think we're gonna get a couple other dates.
Oh, okay. So leave the
So I
11th.
think what we'll do is we'll bring the report to council with the endorsement of this committee. We'll note that the committee's preferred date is the eleventh due to potential council conflicts on the eighteenth and the conflicts with the Parks and Recreation Committee on the May date. I
Shows up.
think eleventh is probably the best. It'll be a long week for some as there's council committee of adjustment and special events. But that's the only day I see that there's no conflicts per se.
Everybody agree with that? Move that ahead, so second by Kristen. Second by Gary, moved by Kristen to move that forward. All in favor? Thank you. 6.3. 6.3, conducting live training.
So, just a little background here, one of the firefighters approached us and said, we have this house, it's been donated, that we could burn down. In the past, this has been done, and there is a very extensive procedure that goes with this. And it's what, about 30 pages in the document? Everything from,
30, and there's another 15-page document for the day of, yeah, so it's.
yeah, it's, safety is at the top of it, like everything from, getting the plastic. That's our test page. Last time I said. So, with that, sorry, like everything from getting the plaster tested for asbestos to all kinds of things. The reality here is this is a high risk activity, no matter how we slice it. I think that, in my opinion, and having talked to Adam, we talked about this fairly extensively. This is a decision council should make as to whether or not it's a risk that you're willing to take on behalf of our firefighters. The training is invaluable. It's as realistic as we can get in a controlled environment. There is no, the house has some issues with locations, so we may not be able to burn the entire house. But there's a lot of good options in that house for firefighter survival, for hose maintenance or hose management, stuff like that, where we may not even put fire to the building. But if we go through the assessment and it's safe to do so, we would like council's endorsement to go ahead and conduct that training.
Well, this.
It's on
Here.
Egremont Road, so
This is almost like.
just if you remember where they may have accidentally hit a water main. So as you're heading west, down Egremont,
Yeah.
you come up to a turn and it's kind of left-hand side right there. It's an older home that looks abandoned. It's been abandoned for a while.
East of where the water main break was, chief?
West.
West.
No, east, sorry, no, what, east.
East.
Closer to the corner.
Right on that corner.
I know exactly.
Right on the corner, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of back, like,
It's back.
about it from the one,
Only that
you
one.
can't really see it because of the brush.
Yeah.
On the other end, it's wide open. So the house has been, like, I was able to go and have a look at it and, DC Jordan's had a look at it. And a couple of the training officers have gone out and looked at it. There's a lot of valuable training in it. We'll really have to look and go through the procedure as to whether or not we'll be able to burn it or not. But like from the perspective of getting in there, the owner basically said we can do whatever we want to it. So that means that we can get in. The only thing he asks is that he has time to remove the windows if we're gonna burn it. No problem, right? So, but there's a lot of opportunities in there to do things like, rapid intervention, firefighter survival, incident command, where we may not even need to open a bail or put fire to the building, but a lot of great training.
So this will be with both stations.
It would be.
Somebody will be backing us up, obviously.
Obviously, that'll all be in place prior to the training.
So just a very quick discussion on that. We've had these discussions in the past about live burns. Now, this is going back a ways now, there was a controversy, I believe, between Kamlaki and Wyoming, the topic of live burns. One station was okay with it, the other station was not. Just, this is going back quite a distance, so, and I'm certainly not gonna mention any names of any kind, so. Does that type of thinking still exist?
No, we're both, we have to do live burns as is, and there's a way to do it safely and everything else. And this house that we're talking about in particular is not set up for us to do live burns on. But the water line's on the other side of the road. It's on Agramont Road, everybody knows where it is, we lucky to get one truck off the laneway if we want to do a full burn on it. That's all the room, it's on a blind corner. So it's definitely unsafe to do as a training. If we had a fire there, we blocked down the road. The only thing we could do.
Sorry, I I missed a good part. Are you saying that it's not a good spot to do a live burn?
No.
That's what I thought I heard.
So,
We got some good training that we can go do some rapid intervention and stuff that we train now and props, everything. It's got all the props in there. We set them all up for it. But to do a live whole burn in there, there's just a bad location, in my opinion.
That's exactly what I thought I heard, so.
Again, that's just this one place. I think what we're talking about is another live burn anywhere that.
I could just maybe explain a little bit. So to do live fire, there's a massive list of prerequisites you have to have set up. One of them being dual water source, dual water supplies. So our last house that we burnt was on Churchill, summer of 2021, I believe. And to do that one, we had a pumper set up behind the house that was being built, accessed by the laneway, back by the barns, and had porta tanks set up there with adequate water, as well as a pumper set up closer to the road with water supply established there. So something like that, we got to take into the logistical side of having the apparatus on scene to have firefighters going inside when we're doing live fire training, because we're going in, we're lighting a fire, firefighters going in, putting fire out, coming out, move to a different room, do that. We did that about 3 or 4 times that day, and then ending it with burning the entire house down. So yeah, like what Chief Jordan's saying, logistically getting all the vehicles there and off the road safely. If not, we'd have to entertain possibly shutting down the road if that's would be an option, but there's lots of things to consider to being able to doing a full fire training day.
And what we want here is just council's endorsement to go ahead and see if this is safe to do so. So go through the process of saying, okay, is this a safe option? That means going through the 30-page plus checklist, the other 15 things. Plus, it's also meaning that not just the burning aspect, there's the other end of it. We're using private property to train on. Council needs to say that's okay. Right? At the end of the day, right, we're still gonna do some high-risk activities in that house, even if we don't burn it. We're gonna do things like firefighter survival, firefighter rapid intervention, removal, stuff like this. So council still needs to be aware of that, so that they're okay with it.
so if I may ask, you're required to do a live burn once a year, correct? Went through all that. Where do you normally do that?
We do that at the Plympton Fire College.
Oh,
So
the
it's a
fire
full
company.
concrete building that's designed to have multiple fires in it every day.
Gotcha. So you said you did a house burn back in 2021, and obviously in a secluded area where you could have everything set up. And this is more of a residential area, so that would be a big concern to me, being in such a residential area. But other than that one property, how often do you use people's private properties? Very rarely.
2021 was the last one. Yeah. We did.
Before that.
Couple years before.
Yeah. And
So we
remember houses, we used to do it quite regularly, but we burnt down all the whole houses, so. We're running out.
There's none left.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Here's what I'm gonna say on this one, since it's gonna have to be a council decision anyways. You guys have just explained the amount of paperwork that you gotta do to even get to the live burn. It sounds like you've already got some major problems and how you're gonna answer those questions.
We have no problem.
However, you may use it for all the training up to that point, not doing a live burns.
On this particular building, yeah, I recommend we not do it. Either that, the one in 21 on Churchill, let's do the paperwork, let's get her done. We got the room, everything else, that. I'm just saying, what, Chief Campbell's asking for is permission from council, not just for this building, to do a live burn in Plympton-Wyoming, so.
Well, like I say, for this,
That's more clarity. I thought it was for this one. But you're looking for permission to do live burns totally in Plympton-Wyoming, right?
That's what I would. Maybe I misunderstood you.
If I may through the chair, I apologize to Scott if he got that perception. This building alone is owned by a private owner, so it's private property. We're going to be utilizing it for training. This is not an emergency. We haven't been called there under the act for training. Right? Whether or not we burn it, live burn, maybe I should have titled it differently, but the ultimate end goal would be to burn it. If that was, if safe to do so, if you were, I clearly state that. But it's the other training that leads up to it. This house, if we talk about burning, it's that much of this much the amount of training we can do. Right? There is so much training that we can do without even putting, any fire to the building. But it's still private property. It's still not owned by us. It's still not insured by us. We're going through this process. So council needs to be okay with that. Right?
So my question would be, I don't want to say yes, because if we endorse this, we're saying, yes, we endorse what the report says. And council usually says, well, if you did all the work, we endorse it. I would rather refer this to council to make, I don't want to say that I'm okay with it at this point. I obviously have some real concerns with the live burn portion of it. Could we amend it and send it to council? I just think we should just talk to council as a whole about it. From start to finish.
Well, whatever the committee recommends.
I don't know how to move.
We were fortunate enough to get the building given to us. There is significant interest in firefighters to do this. It being such a high risk activity, and it being on private property. When Adam and I discussed it, this is a matter for council to make a decision as to whether we want to explore this or not. Realistically,
Being on private property, we should have an agreement. The property owner should want an agreement, because if someone was to get injured, necessarily for that injury. On the same note, if something unforeseen arises, we don't want to necessarily be responsible for something out of our control either. So there should be an agreement of some form in place. So maybe the motion as isn't necessarily inappropriate, given that in the center it says conduct live fire training if safe to do so with a donated house. And then you may suggest amending the agreement to add in that the district chief and the chief carry out the appropriate review the appropriate policies to determine whether the live fire is feasible, and that an agreement be brought forth to council for endorsement.
Yes, that sounds better, because I'd rather not just endorse it the way it's sitting.
yeah,
that's fair.
So I would suggest that you just add it as amended to it, and then Nicole can take my suggested amended and add it to the motion. And that way, before we go back to council, the fire department will have carried out the review. We'll know what type of training they'll be doing, and then we can get it endorsed, the agreement put in place, and just carry on.
It makes it much clearer for us, so it's not blind.
so we want to defer this then, right?
I'm suggesting you approve it as amended.
As amended.
That amendment will ensure that the department will carry out the needed review prior to going to council, and that we'll get the agreement prepared prior to going to council.
Gary, is that okay with you, just to put as amended?
Yeah, I wasn't feeling overly warm and fuzzy the first time, so.
Yeah, but I'm still not, based on,
Well, that's why we're
Chief
doing it
Jordan.
but that's why we're doing it this way, Chair.
The amendment, I got no problem with.
pardon me?
The amendments, they got no issues.
I do apologize. I should have been more clear on that, but this, again, the folks are very keen on doing this within the. So I did make an understanding with them that I would bring it to you folks for review.
No, this is good. It'll, once
And
you
you
guys-
appreciate what the concerns are.
100%. I honestly have very similar concerns, but my role in this situation is to bring it to you folks to allow you to make an educated
That's
decision.
what we're here for.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was moved by Gary Atkinson, second by Kristen Rodriguez, that the report prepared by Eric Campbell, Director of Fire and Emergency Services, Fire Chief, dated March 6, 2024, regarding conducting live fire training, if safe to do so, with a donated house located at 3437 Egerman Road in the town of Plympton-Wyoming, be reviewed and endorsed by the Fire Exec Committee and forwarded to council for approval as amended, with my signature on as amended. All in favor of that?
Yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
good discussion. Okay. Okay, number 7.1, no bylaws tonight, 8 correspondence. Only this time. 9 correspondence recommended reading and routine approval of information items. Your joint health and safety committee minutes and excellent set of minutes. Very detailed. Recommendations, yeah. Very impressed with it. This is exactly what we've been asking for. So do we have any certified reps that are now certified, or is that?
My certification is lapsed and I've actually, I have a lieutenant, that just taken over for a part of the rep. The management rep, he is certified. So.
So there's a 1 and a 2, right, chief?
Yeah.
1 and 2.
It's the biggest challenge we have there, if I may, through the chair, is getting. Most of these courses take place during the day. And a lot of them are routine, so it's a bit of a challenge to get them on a certification course.
Yes, Chris.
Is there something special about the joint health and safety committee? Like, for fighting versus any other workplace?
So part 1 is the same for everyone. Part 2 is fire specific.
For joint health and safety, okay.
We're certified rep, yes, that's correct.
Same as our office people take a different part too than our public works people.
You, Chris?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, just to comment, I forget which recommendation it was now, but there is the proposal coming back from
Yes.
John, the health and joint health and safety audit, and then that's also training. So we've been holding off, waiting to get things lined up with them to receive the training from them. But there's been the delay in getting firefighters certified.
Okay.
So I guess the next question, this has been going on for quite some time that we don't have. But now we're at least having the meetings now, right? So chief, you'll know much better than I do. What's the law under certified reps? Like if we have a committee, but they're not certified yet.
So they can still act
Okay.
until they get certified. The size of committee only actually technically requires 1 certified member on both sides because the size of the amount of employees we have at each station. The logical thing for us to do is to certify everyone that's on the committee. It is a bit of a cost, but long-term, then we can start looking at incorporating that cost into training as a whole, because it is a 3-year thing. A lot cheaper to recertify than if you let it lapse. Yeah, it's one of the things that we've got to really keep an eye on. And that's again, going back to where this audit comes in and setting us up on a system where we're going to be set up for success.
Okay, that's great. Like I say, it is great to see those minutes and the participation that I see in this report. Excellent. Okay, anybody else have any questions on those minutes?
No, you get it.
Okay.
Pardon?
Okay, item number 10, new business. Anybody?
Until the next council meeting.
Any new business, Chris?
No, I think the mayor's had enough in the night.
Here you have it, Mr. Mayor.
I just want the item to recognize on the next council meeting on the 27th of March. We'll be recognizing several firefighters for their service awards. So I would encourage if DCs are both available that night as well as the chief to be here to recognize them for that.
Was there two, Gary?
I'm not sure. I think two of them, two for sure.
There's two for sure, and then there's a third that we were trying to figure out, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, the two for sure. Yeah. We've got two that are for sure.
Do that, that's all it is.
So. Do you know where it's gonna be on the agenda? Like, you're not doing it right away, allow people,
It's gonna be at the first of the meeting.
it's gonna be.
Chris has to work till 6, so.
That's why I was asking.
Okay, we didn't have that information, Chris.
Yeah.
We just got that. It just came in.
Okay, well,
It was the 20th.
you're a busy man, we understand.
We can work with the clerk to
Yeah,
put out a separate section for 6 o'clock. That way we can carry on normal council business until
yeah. I don't think we
10
have
to.
drainage that night at all, do we, on that?
don't.
So you work till 6?
I'm usually in town by 6 o'clock.
You're in town by 6?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Be up here by 6. Try my best.
So DC Fair will work with staff to arrange that to ensure. The firefighters are gonna be available for that too. They need to know that.
They've confirmed their attendance.
For 6.
Well, we'll modify it, but I'm sure 6 won't be a problem.
Okay. Any other,
Be here for 5, so I'm thinking 6 won't be a great deal of change.
any other new business from anybody else? Chief Jordan, you must have something. Chief Freer, you must have. What about the old fire truck?
So we have the running engine. I think I missed that part from that fire call at the last meeting. So we have a running engine. It's being looked at right now to get it fitted into the truck. The seat's been returned. It looks very good. They did a really good job on that. So I completely reupholstered and yeah, from that point, once we get the engine back, we'll get it back to Broadway to do all the wheel bearings and seals and stuff like that.
Right. Thank you. I almost heard. I did want to read it because I did state it in our regular council meeting, how thankful I was to all of you for the tour last Friday of the Wyoming. I mentioned how after 3 hours, they never made it out of the bay. So I never got to see the rest of the fire hall, and I still need a tour, which I'll contact Chief Jordan. Get out there sooner rather than later, while everything's still fresh in my memory.
You want to put all the gear on there, oh, you already did that one.
Oh, exactly, not doing that again. I mean, that took at least 1 hour to get that part. No, but it was really.
Expect our guys to do that in 2 minutes, 30 seconds.
You guys were super, super awesome. Wow, you firefighting, everything about a fire hall was very, very well versed and just very thankful. To the time and effort you put in setting things up for me too, to be able to do hands-on, so that was very nice and appreciated.
You can send her the invoice through me.
If I may, through the chair, it was wonderful to have you, and it was great to see you come out, and it's always fun to give you those experiences, because it really
Yeah.
is. I think you know, in your role, it's pretty important.
Yes, exactly, and now I can appreciate the role of fire much clearer now.
Okay, thank you. Kristen?
Yep.
Number 11, we don't have any closed meetings tonight, so number 12, moved by Kristen Rodriguez, second by Mayor Gary Atkinson, that the Fire Exec Committee adjourns until May the 13th, 2024 meeting or the call of the chair. All in favor? Yeah. Thank you.